The telegram arrived at the ranch 3 days before she did, and Carter Owens read it with the sinking feeling of a man who had just made the worst mistake of his life. Arriving Thursday stop prepared to fulfill arrangement stopped Dolores Sullivan. The words blurred together as he stared at the paper in his calloused hands, remembering the whiskey-soaked night 6 weeks ago, when his ranch hands had convinced him that ordering a mail-order bride was the solution to his loneliness. Now, standing in the dusty heat of Keeler, California in the summer of 1882, watching the stagecoach roll up Main Street with a woman's pale face visible through the window, Carter felt every one of his 28 years weighing on him like stones. The stagecoach door opened, and she stepped down into the blazing afternoon sun, her traveling dress rumpled and stained from the long journey. Dolores Sullivan was not what he expected. The advertisement had promised a woman of good breeding and gentle temperament, experienced in household management and eager to begin a new life in the West. The woman standing before him looked like she had barely survived a war. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, hanging in tangled waves around a face that was too thin, too sharp, with eyes that darted around the street like a cornered animal looking for escape routes. Carter approached slowly, removing his hat. "Miss Sullivan." She turned those wide, dark eyes on him, and he saw fear there, raw and undisguised. "Yes, you must be Carter Owens." Her voice was rough, like she had been screaming or crying for hours. Up close, he could see the bruise on her jaw, fading to yellow-green but still visible beneath the dust. His stomach clenched. "I am. Welcome to Keeler." The words sounded hollow even to his own ears. "I hope your journey was not too difficult," she laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that had nothing to do with humor. "The journey was the easy part." She looked around at the small town with its handful of wooden buildings, the Sierra Nevada mountains looming in the distance, the silver mines that had given birth to this settlement scarring the landscape. "This is quite remote." "Yes, madam. The ranch is another hour's ride from here." He gestured toward the wagon he had brought, loaded with supplies. "I thought we might stay at the boarding house tonight, let you rest, and head out in the morning when it's cooler." She nodded but did not look at him. The stagecoach driver was unloading her trunk, a battered thing that looked like it had seen better decades. Carter moved to help, surprised by how light it was. Whatever Dolores Sullivan had brought with her, it was not much. The boarding house was run by Martha Chen, a Chinese woman whose husband had died in the mines 5 years back. She took one look at Dolores and immediately began fussing, ushering her inside with promises of hot water and a proper meal. Carter retreated to the saloon across the street, suddenly needing a drink more than he had in months. That her. His foreman, Bill Crawford, was already at the bar. Of course he was. Bill had been one of the primary architects of this whole mail-order bride scheme. That's her. Carter signaled the bartender for whiskey. "She looks a bit rough." "She looks like someone beat the hell out of her." Carter downed the whiskey in one burning swallow. "What the hell was I thinking, Bill? I do not know this woman, she does not know me, and she clearly does not want to be here." Bill shrugged, nursing his own drink. "Most mail-order brides do not want to be here. That's why they agree to marry strangers. They are running from something. Question is whether what she's running from is worse than what she's running to." Carter thought about the fear in Dolores's eyes, the defensive set of her shoulders. "I cannot marry her, not like this. She looks terrified." "You paid for her passage. She's here now. What are you going to do, send her back, maybe?" Carter poured himself another drink. "Or maybe I just tell her the truth. Tell her this was a mistake and offer to help her get settled somewhere if she wants to stay in California, or buy her a ticket somewhere else if she prefers. That's mighty generous of you." Bill's tone suggested it was also mighty foolish. I am not going to trap some frightened woman into marriage just because I was stupid enough to answer an advertisement. Carter pushed away from the bar. I am going to talk to her tomorrow, clear this whole thing up. But when morning came and they loaded into the wagon for the ride to the ranch, Dolores spoke first. They were barely out of town, the desert landscape stretching endlessly around them, when she turned to him and said, I need to be honest with you, Mr. Owens. I am not what you ordered. He pulled the horses to a stop, surprised by her directness. What do you mean? She took a breath, her hands twisting in her lap. The advertisement you responded to, the description of the woman seeking marriage, that was not written by me. It was written by the agency. The woman they described, that educated, accomplished domestic creature, that is not who I am. She met his eyes, and he saw something fierce there beneath the fear. I have been married before. My husband died 6 months ago, but before that, he made my life hell. I have no domestic skills beyond the bare minimum. I cannot cook anything fancy. I cannot sew a straight seam, and I have never run a household because I was too busy trying to survive each day. The agency told me to lie, to pretend to be whatever you wanted, but I cannot do that. I cannot trap you into something under false pretenses. Carter stared at her, processing this confession. The bruise on your jaw, your husband? Yes, among other things. She looked away. I left Philadelphia with nothing but what I could carry. The agency paid my passage in exchange for a percentage of whatever settlement you agreed to. I was desperate enough to accept. But now that I am here, now that I see you, you seem like a decent man, and I cannot lie to you. So I am not what you ordered, Mr. Owens. I am damaged goods, and I am telling you this now so you can send me back or turn me loose, or whatever you need to do. The vulnerability in her voice, the raw honesty of her words, did something to Carter's chest. He thought about what Bill had said about women running from something. He thought about the loneliness of the ranch, the endless days of work and silence. He thought about the fear in her eyes and the courage it must have taken to make this confession. You are right, he said slowly. You are not what I ordered. He saw her flinch, saw her begin to withdraw into herself. But I think maybe you are exactly what I needed. She looked at him sharply. What? I did not order a mail-order bride because I wanted some perfect domestic angel, Carter said. I ordered one because I was drunk and lonely, and my ranch hands convinced me it was a good idea. I have been dreading your arrival for 3 weeks, trying to figure out how to tell you that I made a terrible mistake. Because I do not want to trap anyone into marriage any more than you want to be trapped. Then what are we doing here? Dolores asked, confusion and something else, maybe hope, flickering across her face. How about this? Carter said. You come to the ranch, stay for a while. No promises, no obligations. You need a place to be, and I have a place. If you want to leave, I will help you get wherever you want to go. If you want to stay, we can figure out what that looks like. But no marriage, not unless we both actually want it. She studied him for a long moment, searching his face for deception. Why would you do that? You do not know me. Because I know what it is like to feel trapped, Carter said. My father ran that ranch like a prison. When he died 2 years ago, I swore I would never make anyone feel the way he made me feel. So if you need a place to breathe and figure out your next step, you have got one. Dolores was quiet for so long he thought she might tell him to just take her back to town. Then she nodded slowly. All right, I will stay for a while, see what happens. All right. Carter clicked to the horses and they started moving again. They rode in silence for a time, the desert heat building around them. Finally, Dolores said, What is the ranch like? Small, Carter admitted. We run cattle, about 200 head. I have got 4 hands who help with the work. The house is nothing fancy, but it is solid. My mother kept it nice before she passed, but it has been just me for a while now, so it has gotten a bit rough around the edges. When did you lose your mother? 4 years ago. Fever took her quick. The old pain was distant now, but still there. She was the gentle one, balanced out my father's hardness. After she died, he got worse. Drank more, shouted more. When the drinking finally killed him, I cannot say I mourned much. I understand that, Dolores said softly. I did not mourn my husband either. I was just relieved it was over. They shared a look, a moment of mutual understanding that felt like the first real connection Carter had made with another person in longer than he could remember. The ranch appeared as they crested a rise, a collection of buildings nestled in a shallow valley with a creek running through it. The house was simple, wood frame with a wide porch, weathered but sturdy. The barn and outbuildings looked well maintained, and Carter could see cattle grazing in the distance. It is not much, he said, suddenly seeing it through her eyes and finding it wanting. It is peaceful, Dolores replied. That is more than I had in Philadelphia. Bill and the other ranch hands, Joe Martinez, Frank Sullivan, and young Tommy Reed, came out to meet them as Carter pulled the wagon up to the house. They stared at Dolores with unconcealed curiosity, and Carter saw her shrink back slightly under their attention. Boys, this is Miss Dolores Sullivan. She will be staying with us for a while. Carter kept his tone firm, brooking no questions. I expect you to treat her with respect and give her space. Understood, they nodded, though Bill shot him a questioning look that Carter ignored. He helped Dolores down from the wagon and carried her trunk inside. The house was indeed rough around the edges. Dust covered most surfaces. Dirty dishes were piled in the kitchen, and the whole place had the neglected feel of a bachelor dwelling. Carter saw Dolores taking it in and felt embarrassed. I know it is a mess, he started, but she shook her head. It is fine. I have seen worse. She set down her small bag and looked around. Where should I put my things? There is a room upstairs that was my mother's sewing room. It has a bed and a dresser. You can have that. Carter led her up the narrow stairs to a small room at the back of the house. It was dusty but had a good window overlooking the creek and the mountains beyond. I will give you some time to settle in. Come down when you are ready and we can figure out supper. She nodded, and he left her there, heading back downstairs where Bill was waiting. What the hell is going on, Carter? Bill demanded in a low voice. Why is she not your bride? Because I am not going to force a woman into marriage, Bill. She is staying here as a guest until she figures out what she wants to do next. A guest? Bill looked incredulous. You paid good money for her passage. And that was my mistake, not hers. Drop it, Bill. This is my decision. Bill shook his head but knew better than to argue when Carter used that tone. He headed back outside, and Carter was left alone in the dusty house, wondering what exactly he had gotten himself into. Over the next few days, they settled into an awkward routine. Dolores kept to herself mostly, staying in her room or sitting on the porch with a book she had brought. Carter tried to give her space while also making sure she had everything she needed. The ranch hands watched the whole situation with confused interest, but followed Carter's directive to leave her alone. On the fourth day, Carter came in from mending fences to find the kitchen transformed. The dishes were clean, the surfaces scrubbed, and something was cooking on the stove that actually smelled good. Dolores was standing at the counter, her sleeves rolled up and flour on her hands, looking more alive than he had yet seen her. I hope you do not mind, she said when she noticed him. I needed something to do. Sitting around was driving me mad. I do not mind at all. Carter washed his hands at the pump. It smells amazing. I thought you said you could not cook. I said I could not cook anything fancy. Stew I can manage. She stirred the pot, her movements efficient. My mother taught me the basics before she died. After that, it was just me and my father, and then just me and my husband. I learned to make do. They ate together that night, and the stew was indeed good, hearty and filling. Carter found himself watching her across the table, noticing details he had missed before. The way her hands shook slightly when she was nervous. The way she listened intently when he talked about the ranch. The quick intelligence in her eyes when she asked questions. "Why cattle?" she asked. "Why not mining like everyone else around here?" "The mines will play out eventually," Carter said. "Cattle are sustainable if you manage them right. My father was a miner originally, but he was smart enough to see that the real money was in feeding the miners. He started the ranch as a side business and it grew from there. That was clever of him. He had his moments." Carter pushed back from the table. "That was a real good meal, Miss Sullivan. Thank you. Dolores," she said. "If I am going to be staying here, you should call me Dolores." "All right, Dolores, and you should call me Carter." She smiled, a small, tentative thing, but genuine. It transformed her face, softening the sharp edges and making her look younger, more at ease. Carter felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the stew. The days turned into weeks. Dolores settled into life on the ranch with surprising ease. She took over the kitchen completely, producing meals that had the ranch hands singing her praises. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, organized the chaos, and even started a small garden near the house where she planted vegetables she had bought in town. Carter found himself looking forward to the end of each day, to coming home and finding her there, to the conversations they shared over supper. She told him about Philadelphia, about growing up as the daughter of a dock worker, about her mother's death when she was 15, about her father who drank himself to death 2 years later. She told him about James Sullivan, the man she had married at 18 because she had nowhere else to go, who had seemed charming at first but turned cruel once she was trapped. "He never hit me where anyone could see," she said one night as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. "Not until near the end, when he stopped caring what people thought. By then, I had no friends left, no one to turn to. He had isolated me completely." "How did he die?" Carter asked gently. Heart gave out. Doctors said it was all the drinking, the rich food, the rage he carried. "He died in bed, and I found him in the morning. I knew I had to leave before his brother came for the house. James owed money everywhere, and his brother was worse than he was. So I took what I could carry and I ran." She looked at him. "The agency was my last hope. I knew what I was agreeing to might be just another trap, but at least it would be a different trap. At least I would be far away." "I am glad you came," Carter said, and meant it. "I know that probably sounds strange, given the circumstances, but I am glad." "I am glad too," Dolores said softly. "You have been kind to me, kinder than I expected." "You deserve kindness," Carter said. "Every person does." They sat in comfortable silence, and Carter realized with a start that he was happy. Genuinely happy, in a way he had not been since before his mother died. The house felt like a home again. The loneliness that had plagued him for so long had receded, replaced by something warmer, something that felt like possibility. But possibility was a fragile thing, and Carter learned that lesson the hard way when a stranger rode up to the ranch on a hot afternoon in late August. He was a well-dressed man, Eastern, with a hard face and calculating eyes. Carter was in the barn when Bill came to get him. "Man here asking after a woman," Bill said. "Says he is looking for his brother's widow." Carter's blood ran cold. He walked out to meet the stranger, aware of Dolores watching from the house window. "Can I help you?" Carter kept his tone neutral. "I hope so. Name is Robert Sullivan. I am looking for my sister-in-law, Dolores. I was told she might have come out this way." The man's smile did not reach his eyes. She left Philadelphia rather suddenly after my brother's death, and there are matters of his estate that need settling." "What kind of matters?" Carter asked. "That is between family," Robert said smoothly. "I just need to find her. You seen any women fitting her description?" Dark hair, thin, about 26 years old. Every instinct Carter had was screaming danger. This man was not here about any estate. He was here to drag Dolores back to finish whatever control his brother had started. Carter thought fast. "California is full of women with dark hair," he said. "But I have not seen anyone matching that description around here. You might try Lone Pine or Independence, bigger towns with more folks passing through." Robert studied him, and Carter kept his face carefully blank. Finally, the man nodded. "I will do that. But if you do happen to see her, there is a reward for information. $50. He rode off, and Carter waited until he was out of sight before heading to the house. He found Dolores in the kitchen, her face white, her hands braced on the counter like she might collapse without the support. "That was him," she whispered. "That was Robert, I figured." Carter moved closer but did not touch her. "I did not tell him anything. He will find me," her voice was shaking. "He will not give up. Robert never gives up. James owed him money and he thinks I should pay the debt. He said as much after the funeral. He said I belong to him now." Rage flared hot in Carter's chest. "You do not belong to anyone. You do not understand how men like that work." Dolores turned to face him, and he saw tears on her cheeks. "He will not stop. He will search every town, ask every person, and when he finds me, he will take me back, and there is nothing I can do to stop him." "Yes, there is." The words were out before Carter fully thought them through. "Marry me," she stared at him. "What, marry me?" "If you are my wife, he has no claim on you. The law would be on our side." Carter moved closer, taking her hands in his. They were ice cold despite the heat. "I know this is not what either of us planned, but Dolores, these past weeks, I have been happier than I have been in years. I care about you. And I will not let anyone hurt you or take you somewhere you do not want to go. Carter, you cannot just marry me to protect me. That is not fair to you. It is not just to protect you," he said, and realized it was true. "I want to marry you. I want you to stay here to make this place your home. I want to come in from the fields and find you in the kitchen. I want to sit with you on the porch and watch the sunset. I want all of it if you want it too." Dolores searched his face, tears still streaming down her cheeks. "I want it," she whispered. "God help me, I want it so much, but I am scared. I swore I would never let another man have that kind of power over me." "Then do not," Carter said. "We will make this marriage whatever we want it to be, equal partners, not master and servant. I will not try to control you or change you or hurt you. I will just try to make you happy every day, for as long as we both live." She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder, and Carter held her tight, feeling her shake with sobs that were part fear and part relief. "Yes," she said against his shirt. "Yes, I will marry you." They rode into Keeler the next morning and found the circuit judge who passed through once a month. He was a practical man who had seen plenty of hasty weddings and asked no questions beyond the legal requirements. With Bill and Martha Chen as witnesses, Carter Owens and Dolores Sullivan were married in the back room of the general store, the whole ceremony taking less than 10 minutes. Dolores wore the same traveling dress she had arrived in, now cleaned and mended. Carter wore his best shirt and pants, his hat in his hands. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Carter kissed her gently, a soft press of lips that promised protection and maybe something more. They spent that night at the boarding house, Carter insisting that Dolores deserved at least one night away from the ranch to mark the occasion. He arranged for separate rooms, not wanting to push her into anything she was not ready for, But when the hour grew late and he was preparing for bed, there was a soft knock on his door. Dolores stood in the hallway, wearing a nightgown Martha had lent her hair loose around her shoulders. "I do not want to be alone tonight," she said quietly. "Is that all right?" "Of course." Carter stepped aside to let her in. They lay together in the narrow bed, fully clothed despite the heat, Carter's arms around her while she pressed her face to his chest. It was innocent and intimate all at once, a kind of closeness Carter had never experienced. He stroked her hair and told her about the ranch, about his plans to expand the herd, about the foal that was due any day now. She told him about the books she loved to read, about the garden she wanted to plant, about the dream she had once had of learning to ride a horse. "I will teach you," Carter promised. "We have got a mare, Daisy, who is gentle as a lamb. She will be perfect for you to learn on." "I would like that," Dolores murmured, her voice drowsy. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when morning came, Carter woke to find her still there, her hair tickling his nose, her hand resting over his heart. He had never felt more content in his entire life. They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, and if the Hands were surprised by the sudden marriage, they were smart enough not to comment. Carter moved Dolores's things into his room, giving her space in the dresser and closet, trying to make her feel like the space was truly theirs and not just his. For the first few weeks, they continued much as they had before, affectionate but careful with each other. Dolores slept in his arms every night but made no move toward greater intimacy, and Carter did not push. He could see her gradually relaxing, losing the tense, hunted look she had worn when she first arrived. She smiled more, laughed at his jokes, teased him when he tracked mud through her clean kitchen. She also proved to be a natural with the horses. True to his word, Carter began teaching her to ride on Daisy, and Dolores took to it with enthusiasm. Within a month, she was riding out with him to check on the cattle, her seat improving with each outing. She loved being out on the range, loved the vast openness of the desert, the way the mountains rose up like guardians in the distance. "I feel like I can breathe here," she said one day as they sat on horseback overlooking the herd, "like there is room for me to exist." "There is always room for you," Carter said, "as much as you need." She rode over to him, Daisy moving easily alongside his gelding, and kissed him. It was not the first time they had kissed since the wedding, but it was the first time she initiated it, the first time there was real heat behind it. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes bright. "Thank you," she said, "for giving me time, for not demanding anything from me. I meant what I said. This marriage is whatever we make it, I know, and I am ready to make it a real marriage if you are." Carter's heart hammered in his chest. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." She smiled at him, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "I trust you, Carter. I want to be your wife in every way." That night, they came together with a tenderness that brought tears to both their eyes. Carter was careful with her, constantly checking that she was all right, that she wanted to continue. Dolores clung to him, whispering his name like a prayer, and when it was over, they held each other in the darkness, and Carter knew without a doubt that he loved her. He told her so the next morning as they lay in bed watching the sunrise through the window. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it has not been that long, but I love you, Dolores. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." She turned in his arms, her eyes searching his face. Then she smiled, that beautiful, transformative smile. "I love you too. I did not think I could ever feel this way again, did not think I could trust anyone enough. But you have shown me what real love looks like, and I love you for it." They kissed, and Carter felt like the luckiest man in California. But their happiness was threatened a week later when Robert Sullivan returned. This time he brought two men with him, rough types who looked like hired muscle. Carter was in the barn when they rode up, but he heard the commotion and came out to find Robert confronting Dolores in the yard. "I knew you were here," Robert was saying, his voice sharp with triumph. "I knew that Cowboy was lying to me. You are coming back to Philadelphia with me, Dolores. You owe James's debts, and I mean to collect." "I do not owe you anything," Dolores said, but Carter could hear the fear in her voice. "What is going on here?" Carter strode forward, putting himself between Dolores and Robert. "This is family business," Robert said. "Stay out of it." "She is my wife," Carter said coldly. "That makes it my business." Robert laughed. "Your wife, you married her. Do you have any idea what you have taken on? She is in debt to the tune of $3,000. James left that mess behind, and as his widow she is responsible." "I was never legally responsible for James's debts," Dolores said, her voice stronger now. "You are lying." "Am I?" "We will see what a judge says. I've got documentation back east that says otherwise." Robert's smile was cruel. "But I am a reasonable man. Give me $2,000 and I will forget all about it." "That is extortion," Carter said flatly. "That is business." Robert gestured to his men. "Now you can pay me, or I can take her back with me and we can sort it out with the courts. Your choice." Carter's mind raced. He did not have $2,000 liquid. The ranch did well enough, but most of his capital was tied up in cattle and land. He could maybe scrape together $500 without selling something. "I need time," he said. "I cannot get that kind of money together immediately." "You have got 1 week." Robert mounted his horse. "After that, I am taking her back, and if you try to stop me, these boys here will make sure you regret it." They rode off, and Dolores collapsed against Carter, shaking. "He is not going to stop. Even if you give him the money, he will come back for more. That is how men like him work." "Then we need to find another way to stop him," Carter said grimly. That night he called a meeting with his ranch hands. They gathered in the bunkhouse and Carter laid out the situation. When he finished, Bill was the first to speak. "That is a load of horse dung. There is no legal way a widow is responsible for her dead husband's debts, not unless she co-signed on them. He is trying to intimidate you into paying him off." "I figured as much," Carter said. "But he has got muscle with him, and I do not doubt he would try to take Dolores by force if we do not give him what he wants." "So we do not let him," Joe said. The quiet ranch hand was usually slow to speak, but when he did, people listened. "We protect her. All of us." "I agree," Frank chimed in. "Dolores is one of us now. We do not let some eastern bastard come out here and threaten her." Young Tommy nodded vigorously. "We will fight if we have to." Carter felt a surge of gratitude for these men, rough as they were. "I appreciate that, boys. But I would rather find a way to solve this without bloodshed. I am going to ride into Independence tomorrow and talk to the sheriff. See if there is a legal way to handle this." The sheriff in Independence was a weathered man named Tom Morton who had been enforcing law in the area for 20 years. He listened to Carter's story with a frown deepening on his face. "You are right that a widow is not responsible for her husband's debts unless she signed for them," Sheriff Morton said. "And from what you are telling me, this Robert Sullivan is attempting extortion, which is illegal. But proving it might be difficult if he has got documentation that he claims supports his case." "So what can I do?" Carter asked. "Get me proof that he is lying. If you can show that those debts were solely his brother's, or that they have already been settled, or that there is no legal basis for his claim, I can arrest him for extortion. Otherwise, it is his word against yours." The sheriff leaned back in his chair. "I can ride out to your place and be there when he comes back. Make sure things do not get violent, but I cannot arrest a man for asking for money he claims he is owed." "I understand. Thank you, Sheriff." Carter shook his hand and left, feeling frustrated. Back at the ranch, he found Dolores in the kitchen, anxiously kneading bread dough like her life depended on it. When she saw his face, her shoulders slumped. "He cannot help, can he?" she said. "Not without proof that Robert is lying." Carter washed his hands and moved to help her, his hands covering hers to still their frantic movement. "Dolores, do you have any papers from James's estate? Anything that shows what debts he had?" She shook her head. "I left everything behind. I was too scared to take anything that might slow me down." "What about the agency that arranged your travel? Would they have records, maybe?" She looked up at him with desperate hope. "They handled my references, such as they were. They might have contacted James's lawyer or someone." "Then I am going to send them a telegram, see what I can find out." Carter kissed her forehead. "We are going to fight this, Dolores. I am not letting him take you." The response from the agency took 3 days. When the telegram finally arrived, it was brief but useful. "Have documentation regarding James Sullivan estate. Stop sending by post. Stop. Will arrive in 10 days. Stop 10 days. Was 3 days past Robert's deadline." Carter sent back a telegram asking them to wire the essential information, offering to pay extra for the expedited service. They agreed, and 2 days later, he had what he needed. James Sullivan had indeed died in debt, but according to his lawyer's final accounting, the estate had been settled and creditors paid from the sale of his possessions. There was nothing left, and more importantly, Dolores's name appeared nowhere in the documentation. She had never co-signed on his debts, never agreed to be responsible for them. Robert's claim was entirely fraudulent. Carter took the telegrams to Sheriff Morton, who read them with satisfaction. "This is exactly what I need. When Robert Sullivan shows up at your ranch, I will be there to arrest him. And if those men with him try anything, I will arrest them too." True to his word, when Robert returned to the ranch 1 week after his first visit, Sheriff Morton was there waiting. Carter and his ranch hands stood on the porch, Dolores safe behind them, as Robert rode up with his hired muscle. "I am here for my money," Robert announced. "And I am here to arrest you for attempted extortion," Sheriff Morton said, stepping forward. "I've got documentation here that shows your brother's estate was settled, and your sister-in-law was never liable for his debts. You have been trying to extort money from these people based on fraudulent claims." Robert's face darkened. "That is nonsense." "I have got proof." "Then you can show it to the judge at your trial," the sheriff interrupted. "Boys, you are going to put your hands where I can see them and dismount slowly. Anyone who tries anything will get shot." For a tense moment, Carter thought Robert's men might fight. Their hands drifted toward their guns, and Carter's own hand moved to the revolver on his hip. But then one of them looked around, saw 5 armed ranch hands plus the sheriff, and slowly raised his hands. The other followed suit. Sheriff Morton arrested all 3 men and rode off with them toward Independence. As they disappeared down the trail, Dolores sagged against Carter, and he realized she was crying. "It is over," she said through her tears. "It is really over. He cannot hurt me anymore." "Never again," Carter promised, holding her tight. "You are safe now. You are home." The trial happened a month later in Independence. Dolores had to testify about her marriage to James, about Robert's threats. It was difficult for her, dragging up painful memories, but Carter was there beside her the entire time. And when the judge found Robert guilty and sentenced him to 2 years in prison for extortion, she wept with relief. That night, they celebrated at the ranch with a real party. Martha came out from Keeler with supplies for a proper feast, and Dolores cooked her best dishes while the ranch hands broke out a fiddle and taught Carter to dance properly. It was chaotic and joyful, and as Carter spun Dolores around the porch under the stars, she laughed in a way he had never heard before, pure and unrestrained. "I have never been this happy," she told him when the party finally wound down and they were alone in their room. "Even before James, even when I was young, I do not think I ever felt this kind of joy." "Get used to it," Carter said, pulling her into his arms. "I plan on making you this happy every day for the rest of our lives." Life settled into a peaceful rhythm after that. Dolores threw herself into making the ranch not just a house but a home. She painted walls, sewed curtains, and turned the barren yard into a garden paradise with vegetables and flowers. She learned to ride well enough that she could help with the cattle, though she preferred staying closer to the ranch and managing the household side of things. In the spring of 1883, she told Carter she was pregnant. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen until she laughed and begged him to put her down before she got dizzy. The pregnancy was easy, and Dolores bloomed with it, growing round and radiant. Their son was born in December, a healthy, squalling baby they named Matthew after Carter's grandfather. Carter cried when he held his son for the first time, overwhelmed by love and gratitude, and the sheer, impossible miracle of this small life he had helped create. "He is perfect," he whispered to Dolores as she rested in bed, exhausted but glowing. "You are perfect. I love you so much." "I love you too," she said. "Thank you for saving me, for giving me this life." "You saved me right back," Carter said. "I was just existing before you came. Now I am living." Matthew was a good baby, mostly happy and healthy, though he inherited his mother's stubborn streak. As he grew, it became clear he had his father's build and his mother's dark eyes, a perfect blend of both of them. Dolores was a natural mother, patient and loving but firm when she needed to be. Carter loved watching her with Matthew, loved the little family they had built from such unlikely beginnings. 2 years later, they had a daughter they named Sarah. She was quieter than her brother, more thoughtful, with her father's lighter coloring and her mother's quick mind. The ranch house was full of laughter and noise, the sound of children playing echoing across the valley. Business at the ranch prospered. Carter expanded the herd carefully, never overextending, and the quality of his cattle earned a reputation throughout the region. He was able to hire more hands, build a better barn, and even add rooms to the house to accommodate their growing family. Dolores became a pillar of the small Keeler community. She helped Martha at the boarding house when things got busy, taught reading to some of the miners' children who had no school to attend, and organized social gatherings that brought the scattered residents together. People respected her, admired her strength and kindness. No one who knew her would ever guess the frightened, bruised woman who had stepped off that stagecoach years before. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Carter took her into Independence for a rare night away from the children. They stayed at the hotel, had dinner at the finest restaurant the town offered, and walked the streets hand in hand like young lovers. "You ever regret it?" Carter asked as they stood on the hotel balcony looking at the stars. "Agreeing to come west, to marry a stranger?" "Not for a single second," Dolores said. "Coming here, meeting you, it saved my life in every way a person can be saved. I got to become who I was always meant to be. I got love, real love, and children and a home. I got everything I never dared to dream of." "I got the same," Carter said. "That day you stepped off the stagecoach, I thought my life was over. Thought I had made a terrible mistake, but you were not what I ordered. You were exactly what I needed. You made me whole." She turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. "We made each other whole," she said. "That is what love is supposed to do." They stood there under the stars, two people who had found each other by accident and built something beautiful by choice. And Carter knew with absolute certainty that he would spend the rest of his life grateful for the day Dolores Sullivan came into his world. The years continued to roll by, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. There were droughts that tested the ranch, winters that were brutal, and the constant hard work that was the reality of ranching life. But through it all, Carter and Dolores faced everything together, their bond growing deeper with each passing season. In 1888, when Matthew was 5 and Sarah was 3, Dolores gave birth to twin boys, James and Joseph. The house was chaotic with 4 young children, but it was a joyful chaos. Carter would come in from the fields to find his wife surrounded by children, flour in her hair from baking, teaching Matthew his letters while Sarah helped mind the twins. He would stand in the doorway just watching, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "You look like a man in love," Bill said one day, catching Carter in one of these moments. "I am," Carter said simply. "Every damn day I fall more in love with her." Bill, who had never married, just shook his head in amazement. "I got to hand it to you, boss. I thought that mail-order bride scheme was the stupidest thing you ever did. Turns out it was the smartest." "It was the luckiest," Carter corrected. "I did not do anything smart. I just got incredibly lucky that she was exactly who I needed." As the children grew, they became integral parts of the ranch. Matthew showed an early aptitude for handling cattle and horses, riding out with his father as soon as he was big enough to stay in the saddle. Sarah was the thoughtful one, interested in the business side, always asking questions about accounts and sales. The twins were still too young to do much beyond feeding chickens and gathering eggs, but they followed their older siblings everywhere, eager to help. Dolores taught them all to read and write, turning the small parlor into a schoolroom during the winter months when ranch work was slower. She was determined that her children would have the education she had missed, the opportunities that had been denied to her. Carter supported her fully, buying books and supplies, even arranging for a traveling teacher to come stay with them for a few months one winter to supplement Dolores's instruction. In the summer of 1892, when Matthew was 9, a situation arose that reminded them both of how far they had come. A young woman appeared at their door one evening, bruised and terrified, begging for help. Her husband had beaten her, and she had run, not knowing where to go. She had heard in town that Mrs. Owens was kind, that she might help. Dolores took one look at the girl, barely 20 years old, and saw herself 10 years earlier. She brought her inside, fed her, tended her wounds, and gave her a safe place to sleep. When the husband showed up the next day, drunk and furious, demanding his wife back, Carter met him at the property line with a rifle and 3 of his ranch hands backing him up. "You are not welcome here," Carter said coldly. "Your wife is staying with us until she decides what she wants to do. If you have got a problem with that, take it up with the sheriff." The man blustered and threatened, but he left. With Carter and Dolores's help, the young woman filed for divorce, a rare and difficult thing in 1892, but possible with the right documentation of abuse. They supported her through the process, gave her work at the ranch, and helped her get on her feet. When it was over, she moved to independence and started working at a dressmaker's shop, building a new life for herself. "You gave her what you gave me," Dolores told Carter one night after the woman had left. "You gave her a chance to survive, to become something more than what she was trapped in." "We gave her that," Carter corrected. "You are the one who showed her it was possible. You are the proof that a woman can come back from that kind of hurt and build something beautiful." Dolores had tears in her eyes. "I am proud of who I have become. I am proud of the life we have built. And I am so grateful that you saw past the scared, damaged woman who arrived on that stagecoach and saw the person I could be." "I just saw you," Carter said. "The real you. And I fell in love with what I saw." As their 10th wedding anniversary approached in the autumn of 1892, Carter wanted to do something special. He had been saving money for years, planning something he knew would mean the world to Dolores. With the help of some friends in San Francisco, he arranged for the purchase of a small library's worth of books, dozens and dozens of volumes on every subject imaginable. He had them shipped to Keeler in secret and stored at Martha's boarding house. On the morning of their anniversary, he told Dolores he was taking her into town for a surprise. She protested, saying she needed to watch the children, but he had already arranged for Martha to come stay at the ranch for the day. Finally, curious and excited, Dolores agreed. When they arrived at the boarding house, Carter led her to the back room where he had the books stacked. Dolores stopped in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. "Carter," she breathed, "what is this? Your anniversary present?" "I know how much you love to read, how you have been teaching the children from the few books we have. Now you will have a whole library, enough to keep you and the children reading for years." Dolores moved into the room like she was in a dream, running her hands over the spines of the books. There were novels and histories, scientific texts and poetry, adventure stories and agricultural manuals. She picked one up, opened it reverently, and then she was crying, tears streaming down her face. "This is too much," she said. "This must have cost a fortune." "You are worth a fortune," Carter said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You are worth everything I have. These books are just a small token of how much I love you, how much I appreciate everything you do for me and our children." She turned in his arms, kissing him deeply. "I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you for this, for everything, for giving me a life where I can have books and children and joy, for giving me a life where I am not afraid." They spent the rest of the day arranging to have the books transported to the ranch, planning where they would build new shelves to hold them all. On the ride home, Dolores could not stop smiling, could not stop talking about which books she would read first, which ones would be perfect for Matthew, which ones Sarah would love. That night, after the children were asleep, they made love with the passion and tenderness that had only deepened over the years. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Dolores's head on his chest, Carter thought about the journey that had brought them here. The unlikely beginning, the fear and uncertainty, the gradual building of trust and love. He thought about the family they had created, the life they had built from nothing. "What are you thinking about?" Dolores asked sleepily. "I am thinking about how that telegram arrived 10 years ago, and I thought it was the worst news I could get," Carter said. "I was so sure I had made a terrible mistake. And then you stepped off that stagecoach, and you were so scared and so brave, and I knew I had to help you. I never imagined it would become this, that you would become everything to me." "You became everything to me too," Dolores said. "You showed me what a good man looks like, what real love feels like. You gave me back myself." "And you gave me purpose," Carter said. "Gave me a reason to build something lasting. Before you, I was just going through the motions. Now every day matters because I get to spend it with you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in their love. The years continued their steady march. The children grew into young adults with their own dreams and ambitions. Matthew took over more and more of the ranch work, showing a natural talent for managing cattle and land. Sarah surprised them both by developing an interest in law after helping Dolores organize documents for the ranch. She wanted to go to San Francisco to study, to become one of the first female lawyers in California. Carter and Dolores supported her dream, though it meant letting their daughter move far from home. They made the journey with her, saw her settled in a respectable boarding house near the law offices where she would be apprenticing, and cried the whole way back to Keeler. The twins, now in their teens, were inseparable and shared a love of horses. They talked about starting a breeding program, raising quality horses to sell throughout the state. Carter helped them begin planning, setting aside land and capital for the venture. Through it all, the ranch prospered. What had been a modest operation when Dolores first arrived had grown into one of the most successful ranches in the region. They employed a dozen hands, ran over 1,000 head of cattle, and had diversified into horses and even some agriculture in the irrigated fields near the creek. But for Carter, the true measure of success was not the size of his herd or the balance in his bank account. It was the laughter that filled his house, the joy on his wife's face when she was surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Yes, grandchildren now, as Matthew had married a girl from Independence and given them 2 beautiful grandsons. It was the knowledge that he had helped Dolores transform from a frightened, abused woman into a confident, beloved pillar of their community. It was the love that had only grown stronger over 20 years of marriage. On a warm evening in the spring of 1902, 20 years after Dolores had first arrived in Keeler, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, just as they had done thousands of times before. Their hair was graying now, their bodies showing the wear of years of hard work, but their love was as strong as ever. "You remember that first night?" Dolores asked. "When you offered to let me stay with no obligations, no promises?" "I remember thinking I was crazy," Carter said with a laugh. "Bill certainly thought so. You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me," Dolores said. "You gave me choice. You gave me time to heal and find myself again. And then you gave me love, real love, the kind I did not even know existed." "You gave me the same," Carter said. "I was so lonely before you came. I did not even realize how lonely I was until you showed me what it felt like to not be alone." Dolores took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "We saved each other." "We did," Carter agreed, "and we built something beautiful in the process." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. In the distance, they could hear Matthew calling to the cattle, the twins arguing good-naturedly about something, the sound of their grandsons playing. It was the sound of life, of family, of home. "I love you," Dolores said. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "I love you too," Carter said. "You were not what I ordered, but you were exactly what I needed. You still are. You always will be." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Carter pulled Dolores closer, and she rested her head on his shoulder. They had weathered storms and droughts, raised children and built a legacy. They had taken broken pieces and made something whole. They had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and created a love story for the ages. And sitting there on the porch of their ranch, surrounded by the life they had built together, they knew with absolute certainty that their story was exactly as it was meant to be. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worthwhile. Not what anyone would have ordered, but exactly what they both needed. The telegram that had arrived 20 years ago had seemed like a disaster, a mistake that would ruin Carter's life. Instead, it had brought him Dolores, and Dolores had brought him everything: love, family, purpose, joy. She had transformed his house into a home, his existence into a life worth living. As for Dolores, the desperate gamble of becoming a mail-order bride had seemed like trading one prison for another. Instead, it had delivered her to a man who saw her worth, who valued her freedom, who loved her not despite her brokenness, but with all her scars included. Carter had given her safety and space to heal, then love and partnership, then a family and a legacy. They had not started their story with love, but they had built it together, day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. And that made it all the more precious, all the more real. As the night deepened and the desert air cooled, they finally stood, hands still clasped, and walked inside their home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to treasure. But tonight they had each other, and that was more than enough. It was everything. Their children would carry on the ranch, would build on the foundation Carter and Dolores had laid. Sarah would become a successful lawyer, fighting for women's rights and changing laws that had once kept women trapped. Matthew would expand the cattle operation even further, becoming one of the most respected ranchers in California. The twins would build their horse breeding program into something renowned throughout the West. But all of that success, all of those achievements, they would trace back to this. To a frightened woman stepping off a stagecoach in 1882, to a lonely cowboy who chose kindness over convenience, to two broken people who found each other and built something beautiful from the pieces. Years later, when Carter and Dolores were old and gray, sitting in rocking chairs on that same porch with great-grandchildren playing at their feet, people would ask them the secret to their long, happy marriage. And they would smile at each other, sharing that look that couples who have been together for decades can share, full of private jokes and shared memories and deep, abiding love. "We started with honesty," Dolores would say. "I told him I was not what he ordered, and he told me I was exactly what he needed. And we built on that foundation," Carter would add. "We gave each other freedom to be ourselves, space to grow, and love without conditions. We made our marriage what we wanted it to be, not what anyone else expected. We saved each other," Dolores would conclude, "and we kept choosing each other every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard." It was a simple formula, but it had sustained them through decades of life, through joys and sorrows, through the raising of children and the building of a legacy. They had started as strangers, become partners, grown into soulmates. Their love story had not been conventional, but it had been real, and that made it perfect. As the sun set on their lives together, casting golden light across the ranch that had been their kingdom, their sanctuary, their home, Carter and Dolores knew that they had been blessed beyond measure. Not because life had been easy, it had not been. Not because they had never struggled, they had struggled plenty. But because they had found each other, and in finding each other, they had found themselves. The cowboy who had ordered a mail-order bride out of loneliness and desperation had gotten something far better than he could have imagined. The woman who had fled one nightmare only to potentially enter another had instead found her happily ever after. They had both taken a leap of faith, and that leap had delivered them to exactly where they were meant to be. And so their story ends not with drama or tragedy, but with the quiet contentment of two people who loved each other well, who built a life of meaning and purpose, who left the world better than they found it, and who, when their time finally came, could look back and say without hesitation that they had lived fully, loved deeply, and found exactly what they needed in each other. The ranch would continue for generations, a testament to what they had built. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would tell their story, would remember the mail-order bride who said she was not what was ordered and the cowboy who said she was exactly what he needed. It would become family legend, a reminder that love can come from the most unexpected places, that broken people can heal each other, and that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never planned for. Carter Owens and Dolores Sullivan Owens lived long, happy lives surrounded by family and love. When they died together, holding hands in their sleep after 72 years of marriage, leaving behind a legacy of love, family, and the certainty that sometimes, just sometimes, taking a chance on a stranger can lead to the greatest love story of all. Their graves sit side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, the mountains rising in the distance, the desert stretching endlessly under the California sky. And if you visit that place even now, you can feel something in the air, something warm and peaceful, the echo of a love that transformed two broken people into something whole, something beautiful, something eternal. That is the story of Carter and Dolores, the cowboy and the mail-order bride who were not what each other ordered but were exactly what each other needed. It is a story of redemption and healing, of courage and trust, of building love from unlikely beginnings. It is a story that reminds us that sometimes the best gifts come in unexpected packages, and that love, real love, is not about perfection but about choosing each other, again and again, until the very end and beyond.